Hey guys, hi. Welcome to yet another episode of Scratchpad Sessions. And today I have with someone who is a storyteller who weaves stories about friendship, love, trust, relationship, hope, and it just goes on further. And every time I've seen her perform, all I can carry is something good to look forward to, something more hopeful and something more positive. Please start applauding because today we have in Helly Shah. Hi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. 10 points for introduction.
Yes, I tried.
Yeah.
I tried.
It's really sweet,
I mean,
man.
the first take apparently what? So, welcome to this. Thank you so much for being here. I am quite happy that we're doing this and we're
Yes,
having a conversation
excited.
about, yes, how have you been?
Great.
Yeah?
Doing really great
Yeah.
right now.
What is writing to you? What does it mean to you?
This is okay. Writing for me is as much a part of my lifestyle as is waking up every morning and brushing my teeth or something like that. Because for me, thoughts come to me in the form of it's always an idea. It's always something like I've always been this person who feels immensely. And when I feel about things, I write. So writing is as natural to me as feeling. And that's why, I don't see it as a separate thing. And now that I do it professionally, of course, there are times when you have to think of it in a very
Technical,
box,
yeah.
from a box perspective, you have to put it in a certain way. But then again, that's where I feel like because it's so close to me, I always have to see a part of me in what I write for me to believe in it. So that's what writing is to me. It's feeling.
Wow, that's really nice. And I think that's all. That's what comes out when you really express it, and that's
Yeah.
your form of writing. That's really nice. When was the first time you ever? Do you remember going back to your first ever piece of writing? Do you
Oh, yeah.
remember the piece
Oh,
of
yeah.
writing?
Yes.
Do you want to? Let's do it.
No,
I think
was
it's
so bad.
It's
Oh my
okay.
God.
I mean, we all have. The good part is that you've come here now. If you look back, it's been a great growth. So
course.
yeah, what's the piece?
No, so of course I don't remember the piece also because it's not worth remembering.
No, that really. It's okay.
But so
It's-
I started writing when I was in 6th grade.
Okay.
So my first poem was, मुझे याद है, I was exams चल रही थी.
Okay.
And I was super bored. I was so bored that I wrote something about how boring exams are. And that was like when I decided that I'm going to make a book for my poetry. And I started penning down every single time I felt something so intensely, I would pen it down. But interesting story, this actually reminds me. The first time I ever wrote a poem was because I was very young, okay? I was probably in like 3rd, 4th grade. और हमारी हिंदी की टीचर ने बोला था कि 3 पोएम्स तुम्हें लर्न करके आनी है जो बाहर से हो. अब टेक्स्ट बुक की पोएम्स करने को अलाउड नहीं था और बाहर की पोएम्स में उस टाइम पे इंटरनेट का इतना था भी नहीं.
Yeah.
तो बाहर जाके ऐसे बुक्स खरीदो और ये सब करो. एंड मुझे एक बुक तो मिली लेकिन उसमें पोएम्स इतनी टफ थी कि आई वाज लाइक यार ये तो मैं 2 दिन में लर्न नहीं कर सकती. तो मैंने बैठ के ऐसे ही राइम्स में एक पोएम बना दी कुछ भी मतलब. एंड शी बॉट इट. She thought it was an actual poem and she it passed as a
wow.
poem for her and I had to recite it in my class and ma'am was okay with it. So I was like,
So first
I
ever time
guess-
you performed was 3rd, 4th grade.
I am guessing.
Wow. That's-
My own original piece
Yeah.
has been,
You need to
pretty
find
old.
it. You need to find it. And re-perform it one of your shows. Or when you do like a half an hour or 1 hour show. Just be like, hey
Trust
guys, just sliding it. That is my first ever piece. In the middle of the show.
I'm
right
so
in the middle.
sure though that it was something like, hum bacche man ke sache type. So I am not going to perform it ever.
I think it's good. I think it's good to have like that sense of, in a way it's nice to see growth. But it's fun to look at
Yeah.
how stupid you were. But because I started writing when I was like 10 years old. So that's like 5th grade.
Right.
When I go back to looking back at it, it's really bad. And I wrote you can't call it books, but I wrote like notebooks filled of like a story or whatever. And I thought it's a novel, but now I realize how difficult it is to write a novel.
Exactly.
But yeah. In 11th and 12th, I've written a novel about love because
So did I. This is so cool.
I mean, that's the age I was like, oh wow, love.
Yeah,
Like, oh, I should write about
you
this.
figured it out.
Yeah.
And you know what you want from
Yeah,
your
yeah.
love life. And so you write a book about it. I've done it too.
And then
And then you realize it's all a lie. But yeah.
and then you just it's literally like it's almost like a punch on your face after that because you're like, ये book में तो ऐसा था, मैंने ऐसे सोचा था, अब ये reality.
हाँ,
Why is it not like?
exactly.
It's really bad. But it's nice to look back to that and be like, wow, I was really stupid. But, or
But
I've come a long way.
definitely,
I've just,
also the fact that you never realized when you actually manifested this feeling of writing that you want
yeah,
to.
yeah.
So when I
That's,
actually, now it sort of something triggered this memory of me actually performing that poem. For the longest time, I didn't remember this whole incident that it even happened. And so now it's nice to look back at it and think that, okay,
it
writing
happened
was for
then.
me
Yeah.
since so long. And I just never, like, I'm just so happy that I explored it now. Like, I'm doing it now.
And the same thing, Swift I had written, and I was I was scared and shy and just scared of humans as such when I was in sixth and I'd moved schools. And I'm from Bangalore, so I'd moved schools there. So wahan pe, I'd gone to the second school and I'd performed. I remember performing, being on stage, and my friend had registered for this thing called stand-up comedy then, which was not, this is 2006. This is like, yeah, जितने भी साल हो गए. So he just registered saying, ऐसा कुछ है, you have to go up on stage and do it. And I went and I did it without knowing what I was doing, why I was doing it. Nobody laughed because nobody laughed. But it was a sad day for me. But I still remember, yeah, exactly same thing. I was like, I remember taking this up and I remember going back home and telling myself, I'm never going to be good at this. I'm never going to be on stage. I'm going to be able to perform. This is not what I do. And then, yeah, like 12 years later, 13 years later, here I am, like doing this. And it's crazy how the seed, it was like a seed which was there at some point, which
Exactly.
later like became a thing. And I think that's really important to acknowledge it at some point, to look back and be like, chalo, acha hai. I did it. I was not aware. But now I have the
Yeah.
space to go back, That's great. Do you actually write every day? Do you practice this whole discipline? Do you believe in this whole thing कि नहीं रोज लिखना चाहिए?
I do believe in the discipline because it's only when you sort of. So I'll tell you this. One of my friends, he makes music, okay, and he keeps telling me how, like, if he makes 10 tracks, then out of it the 9 are like bad and 1 is good. And I never understood it for the longest time because initially I used to write whenever an idea like struck me and I was hit
it
by
was
this like
inspired.
yeah,
I'm
in the spur of moment and all of that. But it's now that I am every single day trying to write that I have realized that it is so difficult because most of the days it's going to be bad. And you have to be able to accept that.
Yeah.
That, out of the 100 ideas that you get, maybe 10 of them will work for you and may not work in the exact same way that you envisioned when you started writing. So I do believe in the discipline, although I'm not so good at the implementation as of now, but I'm definitely sort of striving towards it. So yeah.
Yeah, I think we all are somewhere every day where like notepad निकाल के 2 line लिख के we're like, ये idea
Yeah.
है, I'll go back to it. I do that a lot where I think of an idea, go back to it. And that's how it is.
Also, I really like the idea of actually carrying like a book with you and writing.
Writing.
But I
The idea
can
of
never
writing.
do it. It is so
You
difficult.
carry
Like,
books, but you carry a book.
Yeah, I do carry like a tiny notepad. But if I'm thinking of something, my first instinct is to go to my phone and,
And
just type it.
it's
Because
easier.
Yeah. Also, when you're typing, I feel the idea of like, you can erase like and write, and I can't do the whole scratching thing.
I don't like
can't.
scratching in a book. It's very bad.
So I feel like it's so much more convenient when you have a phone, but I still I know that like it is so much more raw and honest when you're doing it on a piece of paper, because you know the things that you don't want, they're right there and you've scratched it, so where it started and where you're taking it.
Yeah, I feel like again, because you can bring perspectives, you can always see, acha, this is one perspective which I scratched out and this is another one which I picked up. On phone, it's gone. Like 2 days later when I read, I'm like, this is the refined version of what I actually thought or read.
Exactly.
And it's important. I also want to do it. I've been gifted a lot of diaries which are just left. Also because I don't want to use them. It's just nice diaries.
It's nice to have stationery.
Very nice. Haan. I'm sure somewhere you're on the same lines of agreeing that reading is very, very important, right? When it comes to writing, how important do you think reading is, and what are you reading right now?
Reading is essential. It is the core of writing, because at least मैंने पढ़ना लिखने के बहुत पहले से शुरू किया था, and I used to read a lot of novels. Obviously, growing up, you're this teenager who wants to read about like love and all of that. But yeah, luckily I moved past that as well, and I have been reading. But then, of course, I think now we're so in tune with technology that we kind of just leave the books behind. But I've been trying to get back to reading, and I've been reading quite a lot since the past few months, because I do this, like sometimes when I feel like I want to read, I'll just order like 10 15 books at once.
Wow.
And then I know, and then like I hold myself accountable,
yeah.
that okay, I have to finish these books. So right now, lately I've been reading a lot of Hindi poetry, and because that's something that I am exploring myself, as in how I'm writing now so much in Hindi. तो इसके वजह से like I'm trying to read as much Hindi as I can. And right now I'm reading this book by Irshad Kamil, which is Kali Aurat Ka Khwab.
Okay.
And it was actually a gift, but I've been wanting to read it. I even spoke about it with one of my friends, and he was the one who recommended the book to me. And Amandeep was the one who recommended the book to me. And
Guys, Amandeep. Okay. Everyone
so
knows.
the book is basically about the stories behind all of the music that Irshad Kamil has written. So how it came about and what kind of a life he was living at that point in time. And it is really interesting because it takes you back to when Imtiaz Ali was not Imtiaz Ali.
Yeah.
When they had started and वो पहली कहानी लिख रहे थे अपनी, पहली मूवी डायरेक्ट हो रही थी, उन्होंने अपना पहला गाना लिखा था. और गाना लिखने से पहले जब वो अपने गाँव में थे एंड कैसे उन्होंने डिसाइड किया दैट ही वांट्स टू कम टू मुंबई, एंड कैसे उन्होंने मतलब कितनी बार रात को सिर्फ एक फिल्म स्टूडियो में सोकर मतलब दिन गुजारे हैं. तो वो बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग है, उनकी भी पूरी जर्नी है उसमें. एंड ऑफ कोर्स हिज म्यूजिक, हिज लिरिक्स इज जस्ट अ होल अदर थिंग. So definitely very interesting read, and yeah, I'm in the middle of it right now.
Yeah.
So.
Wow, that's going to be nice. I will look into this book because it sounds very fascinating. Also, guys, she's coming up with her YouTube channel where she's going to be posting poems. So go and subscribe right now. That's
Poems,
great.
stories, everything. Hopefully a lot more. So
watch out the space. You're going to find a lot. But subscribe and press the bell icon when you can do that. Did you ever think, okay, now third, fourth ho gaya, likh liya, sixth ho gaya, and before we started shooting, you said it's been a year you've been into performing and writing stories and poems. Did you ever think your writing was going to take you places?
No. I mean, जब मैंने मतलब मैं जब हाई स्कूल में लिखती थी तब आई वाज लाइक आई वांट टू बी एन ऑथर, एंड कभी तो लाइफ में जब मैं 40 साल की हो जाऊं तो मेरे नाम पे बुक पब्लिश होगी. मगर ये नहीं सोचा था कि आई विल एक्चुअली गेट अ चांस टू परफॉर्म इट.
Okay.
I always knew that I was going to write, and maybe not in the form of poetry and storytelling, but I always wanted to write. So maybe that's why I even studied mass media, because I was like, at some point I want to get into this creative zone of writing. So, but then I never thought about this, that I will be writing and performing poetry and storytelling. So that was a completely different thing, because it was when I came to Mumbai that I realized that, okay, you can perform your pieces.
Yeah.
That's not something. So where I come from, there's not much exposure. All the exposure that I've gotten is through my school. I was lucky to have a school where we had a lot of co-curricular activities,
right,
where I did like recitation, extempore, debates, and all of that.
Wow.
Everything, you name it, and I was there because I was so I loved being on stage. Yeah, I used to do theater as well. So I loved the entire emotion of being on stage. And I think I got that, like I got a taste of it again after coming to Mumbai, after performing at open mics. So that was where it sort of kickstarted for me. And then storytelling happened by accident.
Okay.
Because the first time I wrote a story, I didn't even know I was going to write one. The first time that I wrote a story, I didn't know that something like storytelling was actually happening as an event on the whole. So yeah, and then I just sort of went ahead and sent the story.
What happened here? What is this story? This is very
so
intriguing.
basically, I wrote my first story sometime in 2017.
Okay.
And then it was just there. It was lying there. मैंने अपने कुछ दोस्तों को सुनाया था और शायद एक का ओपन माइक में परफॉर्म किया था. उसके अलावा I had no intentions of going somewhere with the story. लेकिन of course, you know, जब तुम परफॉर्मर हो और तुम्हारे पास कुछ पीस है जो तुम जानते हो कि हाँ ये कुछ मैं परफॉर्म कर सकती हूँ, तो you want to get as many chances as you can. So I took a chance with sending the story to Tay Patel. And they picked it up and they were like, you come and perform for us. And they even, like, I remember having this whole conversation on mail where they asked me, have you performed before? And I was just like, I have, like once or twice maybe. But yes, I have. And then, basically I went there and I did the piece and people loved it. And it's such a satisfactory feeling as an artist to see that kind of a reaction from the audience.
Yeah.
I mean, online audience comes much later. और उस time तो मुझे पता भी नहीं था कि ये
ऐसा
story
होगा,
कि ये story online जाएगी, and then there'll be so many people who like show such love to the story. But when I performed it, my first reaction and first validation was from the crowd that I performed for, and it was amazing.
Yeah, it
So,
is.
and from then I think it's just been an upward coaster, I guess, like an
Yeah.
upward roller coaster, but it's been great. Yeah.
And to much more coming further. So you've written so much, and you'll continue writing. What intrigues you so much about writing?
I guess it's the way you can express things. I mean, the ample of ways that you can actually just get one thing out. I mean, for example, love. So many people write about love. And even one person in his or her life must have written about love hundreds of times. And every single time it brings out a certain part of you that you did not explore before.
Yeah.
And it's that intricacy of how you weave your emotions with your words that really keeps me writing and keeps me going. And the idea of sharing a part of you with the world and having people actually connect with that part of you and see people feel things that you have been feeling for so long, and it makes you feel like you're not alone.
Yeah.
And it makes them feel like they're not alone. And that's the biggest connection that you can establish with another person. It's feeling the same things. And I guess that's what storytelling and performance poetry allows you to do with your work. So yeah.
Do you ever go and look back at your old pieces? Let's say this time that you've been a performer, right? From your first story till now, have you ever gone look back at the older pieces ever and been like, what is this? Or like, why is this? Or it's good.
No, of course I have. I sometimes it does make me feel like, what is this? But at the same time, there have been times when I feel like, I see it and I see its growth, and it makes me feel good. Like there are so many pieces that have been online for a year now, and they're still growing. There are still people watching, and there are still people who come and text me or Instagram me about that I heard this piece a few days ago and it made me feel so good. And that takes you back, and that makes you feel like, something that you did without giving it much of a thought years ago still has that kind of power over people.
Yeah.
So definitely. And matlab, you're growing as a writer, you're growing as a performer. So of course, when you go back to your old pieces, you do feel like, "Arey, ye kya likha hai?" Matlab, that one part of you will go
there.
like, "Arey, I can do so much better now," or something like that. But then I think instead of feeling I'm guilty of it, but instead of cringing at the thought of it, I feel like it's better to look at the growth
Good side,
and like the good side of it, exactly. So yeah, been guilty of that.
Yeah. It is, I think. I've seen my piece and cringed and been like, "Ye kya hai? Why did I ever think of performing this?" But it's okay. That's a good part of how you do it. Now, how do you discover different forms of writing? How do you read about it? Do you talk to people? Do you watch videos? What is your way of discovering newer forms of writing?
I think it's a little bit of everything because, of course, reading. For example, so far I've done majority of storytelling, and I've done pieces in like spoken word pieces, but they've mostly been in English.
Okay.
But I've always wanted to write in Hindi, like in Hindi poetry per se. So that is something that I feel like. So Hindi poetry comes with a lot of mechanics as well.
Yeah.
And you can do free verse, but I wanted to learn the nitty-gritties of the art and more so the craft actually. So then for that you have to read. You have to read as many people as you can and watch videos, of course. But at the same time, I try not to watch as many videos because I feel like everybody that's working, like doing things online right now, they're all also learning at some point, because spoken word poetry wasn't like an art form, say, like it's something that we've
5-6
it's still growing, and we're still learning, and we're still figuring out what it is. So anything and everything is spoken word poetry at this point. It's just words that are spoken at the end of the day. So definitely, like, and I mean, language is no barrier. I like to watch English pieces, Hindi pieces, read as much as I can, read as many authors and poets that I can. And also, I mean, so many times I've seen like so many theater artists do really good work with like their monologues and all of that. And I think that is also, of course, it's a form of storytelling. And it definitely does inspire me to explore different forms in which I can put out my work. So definitely.
I want to dig a little deeper on that point. Have you ever written a Gujarati piece? Have you ever tried performing, writing, anything close to this one? Have you had people text you saying, "Hey, where is a Gujarati piece?" Something?
No, so not
No.
really. I mean, not with poetry and
Oh
storytelling and all of
man,
that.
you should.
No, so the thing is, the more that I have been in this formal CBSE education and then coming to Mumbai, I think the more I've lost touch with my vernacular language, because now I feel like even when I speak in Gujarati, it's half English and half Hindi, and my parents are just left to figure out what I'm saying. So I think that has definitely affected my ability
Oh.
to think in Gujarati as well, because I mean, we always recommend people to write in the language that they think in. And right now, I mean, because it's the most, then that's when it's the purest for you. If you're translating, of course, words will get lost in translation,
It
thoughts
is.
will get lost.
Yeah.
So, yeah, for me, Gujarati has sort of been on the deteriorating side of it. Like, it's not in the best state for me right now.
You should.
But definitely,
You
it's something
should.
that I'm going
Yeah.
to do now.
I think we should do a. We should
No,
do a
no, no.
show. We
Don't
should
say
do a
it.
show. We should do a Gujarati show, okay, full of poems and
Yeah.
stories, and we should call people and we should, yeah, we'll do something at Habitat. Yeah, let's figure let's figure in time. Okay, cool. So let's dig deeper into this aspect. What is storytelling to you? You like it is clear you are a poet. You're a storyteller first. You've started with stories as a performer. So what does that mean to you in terms of how does stories impact or what is storytelling?
For me, storytelling is personal, first of all, because with poetry, you can explore things in a very abstract form. But with storytelling, it's where it gets personal for you. I mean, of course, there are other forms where you do fictional storytelling, and that's also amazing because even then you have to incorporate a side of you or a part of you, you're sharing that.
Yeah.
But for me, majority of the pieces that I have done so far have been personal. They're from my, of course, you draw some from your life experiences, and then there is a little bit of fiction for effective storytelling. But at the same time, it comes from within you, and that's why it is so impactful. Because I can go online and I can read up on love. Wikipedia will give me something about love, but the reason why people come and watch these stories is because you're sharing something that is so personal to you, but at the same time it is so relatable. Because no matter how much we try to think that meri story alag hai, mera love different hai, at the end of the day we're all going through
Yeah.
the same emotions, and we all feel it at maybe different intensities, but we kind of go through the same kind of highs and lows in our lives, if it's love or if it's family or if it's whatever it is. And so that's why I think storytelling is so impactful as an art form, and that's why I'm so happy that it's actually thriving. Because we have explored layers of storytelling with theater,
Yeah.
with films, but the experience of a raw storytelling performance of just somebody coming on stage and just telling you what has happened to them in their life
Yeah.
is it connects you with the person in a completely different way.
Yeah.
And I think it's a little selfish also for the performer, because I feel like somewhere or the other we're all looking for that kind of connection
Yeah.
on a personal level. So if I go up on stage and I perform something that's so personal to me, and even two people come and tell me that
I
this really
related
moved
to-
me,
yeah.
or I related to it, it was very impactful for me personally, I feel like it lifts the burden of I think if you've ever gone through something, it lifts the burden of feeling all that pain, because now you've channelized that pain into art.
Yeah.
So not necessarily pain, any kind of emotion that you've channelized, but definitely I feel like you just share that burden and the joy and all of it. So I think that's
Yeah,
why
it's like what you mentioned like a while back, which was there are people, then audience, right? Audiences, they come and they attend someone performing. The performer is someone who's trying to talk about his or her life, where she are trying to bring in different elements. In a way, it's in the end, it's all about how we all on the same boat. Like just to let someone know that, hey, like this is what I felt, and then someone somewhere sitting on a different sphere would just be like, oh yeah, even I don't know you, but we are on the same boat, and
Exactly.
that's what matters. That somewhere it's a nice feeling to know that everyone's on the same boat, sinking, trying to figure it
और
out.
कितने लोग आकर ऐसे भी कहते हैं कि मैं ये सोचती हूँ या सोचता हूँ और मैं कभी कह नहीं पाया. तो like just the feeling of कि कोई और मैं जिस चीज से गुजर रहा हूँ
Yeah.
उसको आर्टिकुलेट कर पा रहा है, उसको आकर बता पा रहा है, तो उनको ऐसा कितनी बार ऐसा लोगों को लगता है कि उनकी कहानी कोई सुना रहा है.
Yes.
And that feeling is so beautiful to just have, just to know that it's out there. So I think it's also a lot of that, because there are so many people I feel जो नहीं बता पाते हैं, जो नहीं articulate कर पाते हैं अपने thoughts, and so for them to see somebody who's able to do it, and for them to connect on that level, it's really
Yeah, and
nice.
also when you write and you plan to go out there and perform, the thought was never कि आज इतने लोग को relate करवाना है, whatever. You take your story there,
Exactly.
and suddenly you realize, oh, there are people who will relate to this, are relating to this,
Exactly.
and their life, some part of them has changed, some part of them has impacted. Your work has impacted in some way, and I think has its own beauty.
And that's something that, like, for me, I realized that with time, with with the story being put up on YouTube and people responding to it and personally texting me, that's when I realized that okay, it has this kind of an impact. Because when I wrote the story, it was so personal to me. It was such an important part of my life, and I'd been through, like, any story. This I'm
Yeah.
talking about my first story, but apart from that, also every story that I've ever written, it's never been from the perspective of that, okay, what will people say, relate to? It's always come from a place where, okay, this is what's happened to me, and this is what I have, I think I've taken out of it. So this is what I want to come and share with the few people that are here. But I mean, it's just, I've realized that it's larger than who you are. And
Yeah.
like, once it goes up on the internet, it's definitely bigger than you.
Yeah.
So that's a realization that's come after a long time. So
And it's really nice that this way it reaches out to so many people that you never met, you may never meet.
exactly.
But they will look at it sitting in some other part of the world, just being like, yeah, this is great. This I relate to this, or like this impacts me, and I think that's wonderful. You're talking about pieces, right? You're talking about these different stories. Just take us through the journey from a seed of a story to its very end of how does it go from there? Like you have an idea today. How do you go about it? What do you do to seek inspiration and everything about it?
Okay, so firstly, my process is something that I am figuring out as I go myself, because I feel like you can never have one steady process, because
that's true.
as an artist, you're attempting to experiment with as many art forms as you can, whether it's poetry, whether it's storytelling. So the process will vary in that sense, but of course there's a basic routine that I do have with my work. For example, जब मुझे कोई भी thought आता है, तो when I know कि okay, इसमें potential है to become a story or a poem, usually I don't write it away immediately. Like I don't sit with a book immediately, because I know that now that I am sure of it कि इसमें potential है, तो a lot of times I just sort of let it cook in my head for quite some time, because I don't just start writing story keeping the starting in mind. I always have this that okay, I want to always be sure of where I'm taking it and where it's gonna go. So I also have my ending in mind. So it's the flow that I have to figure out
Right.
now for me. So that's why I let it cook in my head to the point where I know that okay, this is where I want to conclude the story. This is where I want to take it. So after the whole, the whole like idea sort of materializes in my head is when I actually start writing. Usually I prefer to sort of write it with pen and paper, but that doesn't happen to me as often. I generally end up doing with like
On the phone or
phone or
laptop.
laptop, because sometimes there's this urge that you cannot avoid. So if I'm say in a cafe, or I'm just in the train or somewhere, then I will just start writing. Then it doesn't matter what's happening around me. So then and usually I write the piece at one go. I can't break it down. So I write the piece at one go, and then I leave it for a while, because so of course, because now I know that once the piece is out there, it's the first draft, there's going to be a lot of editing.
Yeah.
And usually I want my pieces to be as crisp as they can be. And that definitely requires you to cut out a lot of parts.
It does,
so
yeah.
that's why like first time when I write it, of course, एक तो तुम already laptop पे लिख रहे हो या phone पे लिख रहे हो, तो तुम already edit कर ही रहे हो, because you will think of better words and do it as you go. But फिर I sort of just keep it aside for a while. Maybe few hours, sometimes few days, sometimes months also. Depends
Just
when I'm
leave
just...
it.
Yeah, if sometimes it just sort of slips your head as well.
Forget that you've
yeah,
written
I
a
mean,
piece.
that's happened to me sometimes where I've written something and then I've just been like, okay, I'll look into it. And then I've forgotten to look into it.
Wow. It comes back, yeah.
Yeah,
but
yeah, exactly. Less frequently now that I have to do it on a regular basis. But yeah, it has definitely happened to me before. Because now that I'm doing my own YouTube channel, there are so many pieces that I've written so long ago and I've never performed them. And mujhe, matlab, when I was sort of trying to compile that, okay, what all content do I have and what all do I want to put out, is when I realized there are so many pieces that I've written and I've never looked at them.
No, yeah.
So that's something that, yeah, now I've realized that, okay, that's what I've been doing. But yeah, coming back to the editing process of it, I usually start editing after sort of sleeping on it, because I feel like once you look at it after a while, your thoughts can be a lot more fresher. Your perspective is a lot more objective, because I feel like if you are too attached to every single thing that you've written, every line, then you will not be able to edit it. So when I sit for editing, it's usually like I'm not as I think of it as just as a piece. So I try to critique myself as sharply, as harshly as I can, because I genuinely don't want to go on a rant in my pieces.
Yeah,
So
it's
I usually
a very
try
thin
to,
line sometimes.
Exactly. That's why I try to sort of be as objective as I can, and then that's how the editing takes place. And definitely, you take opinions from people that are in the same field as you. Sometimes are close friends. Sometimes are your sister.
Yeah.
Like I said. So then. That's usually the process that I follow. But even after editing, I've realized that writing something and performing it is definitely still going to bring differences in your piece. And it's a whole other thing, because once you perform na, tumhari language bhi thodi colloquial ho jayegi, tumhari language bhi thodi like it'll become more conversational for you. So there will be words that you will add, there will be words that you will sort of remove or just
and not
sort
keep
of
it more formal. It's more casual.
Exactly. Like you will make it a little more relatable, in the sense that like तुम्हारी एकदम friendly conversation वाली tone आ जाती है. So I guess that also affects the editing of the piece. But then that's something that I probably won't do it on paper, because now that I'm already rehearsing the piece, then I already know that, okay, these are the places where I'm going to play with the words, or I'm going to play with my pauses and all of that. That's probably not on paper, but it's in my head, because once you start rehearsing it, eventually becomes a part of your muscle memory. So that's how I usually go about the process. But of course, there are some times, like I said, where the piece just disappears from your memory. Then it takes a different turn.
But if you think about it, if I have to go back in time, I think there have been one or two poems that I have written, forgotten. Then months later, I was just going through notes and I was like, oh, I've written this.
Yeah.
Like a half a piece, and I have to go back to it. And again, I've been like, yeah, I'll check it. Forgotten. I'll have to go back today evening and check it again.
Exactly.
So you go through this entire process of writing, ideating, editing, and then taking it. But when do you think it's okay for your piece to be on stage? Like, does it have to be after a few drafts? Does it have to be like, is it the first draft that has to go up on stage because you're like, chalo, let's experiment? Or is it more depends on the situation, day, open mic or whatever? How does it?
For me, majority of the times it's been like I have performed a piece when I know it's ready. It's not been like, okay, I've done it a few times and then edited again and then done it a few times. Because for me, I need to be completely confident of the piece when I go up on stage. So if I am, say, going and performing something that I've just written today and I'm going and doing it, I will have zero amount of confidence, because I need to have that kind of faith. And that only comes with when you've edited it enough, you've like made 100 renditions of it.
Yeah.
And that's when you know that, okay, this is good enough to go. And also rehearsing and remembering brings a lot of confidence, because of course even now when we do open mics, we read from a book or our mobile phones or whatever, but I feel like I am really immersed in a performance is when I am it's all by heart for me. Like I know that I remember the piece like through and through. So that, and I'm only going to put so much effort when I'm ready for it, like when I know that this piece is ready to go. So, and that usually takes multiple edits and multiple drafts. So that has been very rare where I've had like one draft and I've been like, okay, it's ready to go. Like it has to be then it has to be really good for me to actually have that kind of faith at one go. But yeah, it's usually a process like that only. Like I've not done that where I sort of go and see how it works and then sort of edit
it's the other
again.
way around. It's more prepared and then you're like, cool,
Yeah,
now I'm
it's
more.
more like reciting a
Okay,
piece,
yeah.
where you're already rehearsed. You have an act prepared. It's more like that for me.
And which piece or which piece has been one of those which has taken the highest amount of drafts? And like how
Uh,
many drafts would has that gone to?
okay. Uh, okay, this is going to be a tough this thing to remember for me for
Yeah,
now,
if you
because
just
there's been like there are too many pieces that are online as of now, but
yeah.
definitely I think I've edited most when it's been like a brand collaboration.
Okay.
That's when you have to edit like the most,
Yeah.
because it's not even voluntary anymore. It's like you're instructed to
Yeah.
edit. So I think those must have taken the longest amount of like edits and drafts. But so I remember this one piece when I was working on a project with a brand, and it was a Hindi storytelling piece. And I think the brand even approved the piece that I'd written, but I just wasn't satisfied with it.
Okay.
So 2 days before we had to shoot it, and we had to like do it in a workshop session. I changed the whole piece. Like I changed the entire flow of it, and I changed the like the not the storyline per se, but I did change majority of what it was, because I felt like I'm not completely satisfied with it. And if you know you've not given your 100% to a piece, then you won't have the courage to even go and perform it, because
Yeah.
you require that kind of confidence to pull it off. Then, so I think it's majority of it has to be with like those brand pieces. But otherwise, yeah, I think when it's been like a piece that's so close to my heart, it's taken lesser edits for me, because it comes out,
It just comes in a flow and you don't have to
Yeah,
edit audio.
exactly. So,
Nice, that's very nice. So you're talking about reciting and performing, right? So what has performance taught you so far?
so much.
Yeah.
So much.
Anything that
From
you
the first time I performed, I now when I look, if I have to look at the first time I performed, I feel like I didn't know so much about just being on stage. Because ठीक है, I can be one of those people जो ऐसे school की competition में recite करके उतर जाता
yeah,
है.
it's
But being a performer is a whole other thing. You have to pull the crowd. You have to interact with the crowd. You have to be a part of the whole event. Like, you have to make it so much more interactive as a performer. I mean, when you see a story online as just a story, it's a different thing. It's a rehearsed piece, and of course you've put in efforts with your expressions and your
Yeah.
posture and your pauses and all of that. But when you're doing it live, there's so much more that goes into actually keeping the audience engaged at all times. So I think performance has taught me a lot about just confidence in general, or like you just know when a person is not rehearsed enough and they're on stage.
It
And that's
is-
something that I have realized in my own pieces. Like I know when I'm fumbling or when I'm forgetting is when I am not as connected to maybe the audience, to maybe the environment, to maybe the rehearsals. Like maybe I have not done enough rehearsals. So all of it affects your performance so much.
Yeah.
The energy that you are in also affects the piece so much. I mean, if I were to say do a very happy piece in a dark venue, it's not going to come out in the way that it should, right?
Yeah.
So I think energy also plays a very important role, and all of that I've learned only after performing so much and after going up on stage as much as I can. So
That's wonderful. And I think that really, I think, yeah, any kind of energy that you bring in on stage is the energy you set for the room, for the audience that's looking at you, which could be the first time or the last time. I mean, whenever they've seen you or
Yeah.
they're going to be seeing you. And I think it's really important to come in with that energy and come in with a very prepared mind. And I think it's very evident. Every audience member knows that, or the room knows that you've not given not doing your 100%.
And I feel like that's something that a lot of like young people who come and ask me about, in the sense that who've just started writing,
Yeah.
not young, but like just started
Yeah.
writing, and they're just like they're looking for
Yeah.
more platforms to perform on, and they often they ask you how to reach out and all of that. But I think where a lot of difference comes in is in the performance. Because you may have written the most beautiful piece, but a lot of time, like we face the stage fear.
Yeah.
And to get over it, you just have to go on stage.
You have to keep going on stage, yeah.
There's no other way. There's no other way you can prepare for it unless you actually do it. So that's why open mics are the best platform to actually do that. So Hi guys, so we are here at Scratchpad Sessions with YsoHarsh.
Yes.
And if you enjoyed these videos, then please like and share and subscribe to this channel, press the bell icon and keep watching.